Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. This is a talk video, and today we are going to do things a little bit differently. First, a quick little update. We had some technical problems a week ago. The computer that I had been trying to force to live a little bit longer finally died, and that's why we skipped the Scout Trooper kit reveal. Fortunately, this happened during the off week in Grand Arena, but because of it, the timeliness of certain videos will have passed by the time I do a little bit of file recovery, and we need to just keep moving forward. On the plus side, I'm getting a new computer, and we may start live streaming some Grand Arenas moving forward, at least some of them, just because my schedule, as you guys have seen from time to time, is indeterminate, that I don't think I'm going to be able to consistently play Grand Arenas at a designated time, although I might be able to commit to that on a weekend day. Also, consequently, this gives us an opportunity to try and experiment, do a couple things a little bit differently. And that's what this video is about. We're going to look at the free-to-play roster building and handle it from a little bit of a different vantage point and strategy instead of placing it at the end of a video. And we might handle it like this in the future, or we might just break away from the talk series altogether and give it its own playlist, its own thumbnail and graphics, its own color. One of the larger motivations with this pivot, though, is to break down how I am approaching the game as an active component instead of passively reacting to the things that I've previously done when I'm talking over the gearing footage that I'm showing you from a previous session. There was some talk about this on the Discord, and Lysel and Tract over there brought up some good points that prompted some ideas on my end. And that also means we're going to skip a couple periods of roster building that occurred during the end of the last Grand Arena season. You're not missing much. The footage, though, is on a hard drive I don't have access to right now. But we will touch on it, though, as we break things down in this video just a little bit more briefly. But we'll see how this goes for a couple sessions. Let me know in the comments what you think. The reason I haven't done it before is just I didn't feel like it warranted its own video topic, but maybe it's something that where there's enough interest in it. So here's the rough structure of how we're going to handle things today. We're going to look at the Leia Organa requirements because they do impact everything that we're going to be talking about here today. And then the roster building itself, we're going to look at the recent gearing that I did to wrap up the end of last season of Grand Arena, the next projects that I'm looking at, and then the forthcoming raid and other things that I'm focusing upon, and more importantly, why I'm approaching things the way that I'm doing. And we begin with the GL Leia Organa post we received at the end of last week that I couldn't get to. Now, there's just a few things I want to touch upon here. One, they give us some hints to how her kit is going to function. One is both teams are going to be immune to cooldown manipulation. So characters like JML who can increase cooldowns, that's not going to function in the same way. The other element here sounds like an AoE fracture being Thrawn's ability, so that can go to everybody on the enemy team. And then the last portion here is there's going to be some interactions that might elevate an ally to eliminating an enemy in a one-shot capacity. And what we need to think about here is just how CG kind of steps it up with each new GL, like where JMK and how Cat interacts with JMK builds onto how Chrysanthemum and Jabba function, where Chrysanthemum's kit is a direct response to a character like Cat. And we can imply some of that here, where if we have this one-shot capacity that Leia is introducing to some other characters, that might be a Cat counter, or interact with Chrysanthemum in the same way that Cat is interacting with Chrysanthemum. So we can start reading the tea leaves here. This is interesting stuff, but we'll dive deeper into that once we get the kit reveal, which should probably be in about a month, I imagine, when maybe a little over a month. I imagine when Captain Drogon hits shipments is when Leia is going to go live. Now, the other element here is they bring up what Leia's squad is going to be used for in the coming events, and this isn't even comprehensive. It's conquest, galactic challenges, datacrons, economy events, but they don't even mention the raid itself, which is also going to be true, and territory battles. Even if it's not direct, I imagine she's going to be very effective there. But they do here in economy events this new indoor escalation tier. That's going to be interesting. I wonder if that's going to be another place where we can receive Omicrons. Maybe it's going to be other kinds of resources to help us. Maybe we'll see some of those relic materials. Other high need items help ease some of the game economy through that tier. So that's going to be a pretty nice incentive, similar to how Smuggler's Run 2 was very nice with Java. And that might make a lot of us, it might really highlight and emphasize the import of getting Leia. One nice thing to throw in here is that Leia is not going to impact the existing CLS squad, or should not at least, which was a growing concern amongst the community, so I'm happy to see that. It sounds like Captain Drogon is going to be pretty powerful if he's going to allow the CLS squad to remain intact. We'll see which components he's going to be replicating. But it also introduces the question, if he's going to be that good, maybe he's going to go over to CLS and we're going to find some interesting things to do with Drogon on a CLS squad. We'll have to make choices about what's the optimal use, but we'll see that once the kit happens. But really, it's about the final two sets of requirements here. These requirements were a huge surprise. One, I didn't think we'd get all of them as quickly as they did. It was just a couple days after Scout Trooper that they threw in the final set of requirements. It's nice. It's going to allow us to prep. Probably means we're going to get Drogon this week. Actually, by the time I post this video, we'll probably have Drogon's kit reveal. But the few things here. Number one, I was basically 1 for 10 with the speculation video I made the previous week, which is still a lot of fun to do. We don't get to do that many things like that anymore. There was a few structural pieces, though, that were directionally accurate on my part, even though I was off the mark on the targets themselves. Looking at Hoth, Bespin, Endor as the major scenes for the characters to come from and for the event itself to be built around, and the core Star Wars characters also being an important emphasis. I just guessed wrong on which ones because I thought CG would go for the less developed characters and not the ones that we already have at a decent level of development. And if you did see that speculation video, I loudly proclaimed in there that I didn't think Scout Trooper was going to be a marquee release related to the Leia prerequisites. So he was a major surprise for me. I thought that CG had preemptively told us who all the marquee characters were going to be to avoid leaks. So for them to give us one that was unannounced, that was a welcome return to how things used to be, and I was happy to be surprised by it. And the last thing is these requirements are shockingly easy, seriously shocking, particularly for late game players. Other than the marquees, these requirements are either done, close to done, or kind of gimmies. With the second set of requirements, we get some Hoth characters, some Endor characters. R2 is the only character required above Relic 7, and it's only a Relic 8. And most of us already have him at R7 from previous requirements. Captain Han and Rolo were required at R3 already, so bringing them up slightly is fairly easy. And from there, Chirpa is a leader. We're already taking up 2 of his allies, so just getting us closer to a fuller Relic squad, that's going to be pretty nice. And those players who already have Relic Murder Bears, they've got a little bit of a head start on us. And then to round out set 2 is Scout Trooper, but that brings us into set 3 with Captain Drogon because they are the remaining marquee requirements. Both of them are going to be at R7. That's predictable, manageable, not a huge deal. With the rest of set 3, there's another 3 characters that players need to relic for other purposes, and if you're a late game player, you already have them at relics. The only other one that is more work is Lobot. He's getting a rework, and many speculated that he was going to be one of the requirements, so that's not really a surprise. So in total, out of these final 2 sets, 4 out of the 10 are new relics. That means 8 of the 16 total, half are going to be characters that we need to relics, and half of those are marquees. That's very close. That's easy to work with. That means 4 characters are going to be easy relics. 4 of them are going to be a little bit more work because they're new characters and they're going to have Kairos. And the rest were already done, or close enough. The rest of this is about the raid. We're going to return to the raid topic later in the video, so skip ahead if that's something you specifically want to hear about. We're not going to get too deep into it. So with the free-to-play gearing portions of the talk videos, those were several sessions of gearing behind my actual roster. We're going to just get caught up, and I'm going to fill in some of the other things that I've done since the last time we had a talk video, and I updated where my roster was at that point. Where I am now is Sith Eternal Emperor is at gear 12, and now the ultimate materials have been farmed. I was very depleted in crystals, so I just slow played it throughout the Grand Arena season and tried to conserve a little bit of crystals while also going after Sith Eternal Emperor and my other goals on top of some other farms, some other pieces. So we're ready for some more progress there. The other major thing that we had been working on is the Leviathan, obviously. The Leviathan progress, just adding in higher level relics, really prioritizing the ones that were related to datacrons that I expected to use, or to add characters to squads and place decent datacrons on them, and then working on the farming with Cal Kestis. The other elements that we worked on, or that have changed on my roster, is I added the Omicron to Merit. And this is an Omicron I wish I would have done sooner. One, I just wish I had more footage so I could really prove the argument that you don't need to be waiting, and now I have a 7-star Marin, and I'll be taking her up to the next level, getting that higher level ability where she's going to reach her full functionality. But it's not an Omicron to wait on. It's an excellent Omicron. Marin's already good, and I definitely feel like I cheated myself by not utilizing that Omicron sooner, especially when it was pretty clear it was an Omicron I was always going to put on. So I should have just put it on to see how it performed. I do think it is one that you will not regret at any stage. And the other Omicron I put on the other week was for Captain Rex. I put these Omicrons on for the final week of that Grand Arena, or maybe it was the final 2 weeks. I think I got more than a week's worth of footage from Aaron. Maybe I'm wrong. But the Omicron on Rex, excellent Omicron at Relics. I'm not finding a lot of utility for Rex at lower stars and lower gear on the Phoenix allies. They can beat a couple things, but it's not one of those squads that I'm finding punches up. Clearly, he is a good squad when you're dealing with relic versions, but the punching up opportunities are a little minimal right now. And that leads us into the first segment of gearing that we're going to be doing this week, which is really just wrapping up a lot of the projects that we had already been working on, because as you can see here, we're ready for Cal Kestis. Marin, Tarful, Saul, we're done farming them. We're already done with Cal and Sir Junda. So that means we're going to be promoting, but we are not adding any additional gear pieces for Gear 12. Because I want to do, we have that lowest viable teams series of videos, which I've done a poor job of staying up to date on, but I still am going to capture the footage, work on it, see how that goes. And the lowest for that event is without any additional Gear 12 pieces, so we're leaving them off. But we are going to level up this ability here. And this is one of the downsides to me doing this live and instead of talking over the old footage. The old footage I always accelerated the speed of, so it would go a little bit faster. That we're not doing. We're going to really react live because I think it's going to create a different kind of conversation where we're definitely putting this Zayd on, where I'm explaining what I'm doing instead of just kind of passively pointing out the things that I had done previously. So we're Marin ready. And now we are Tarful ready. We're not going to put on that Omicron. Everything else is already done. See all the other gear pieces that are there. And just the same deal here. Take him up to Gear 12, and we're going to move on to the next character, which is Saw. He does have a Grand Arena Omicron, and it is one I am very curious about, because you can basically tell with an Omicron that is that long, that it's going to be a solid Omicron. The question is, for me though, how much more does it allow him to punch up? Like, how much better does the squad get? Because you can take a look at like Akbar and Leia Omicrons. Those are solid Omicrons. Doesn't really change too much what they do or what beats them. It helps, it makes them better, but it's not a game changer, especially with how that team has been ripped apart. And with Saw, I'm very curious, very tempted, but I don't see within the characters that he's built around how that's going to punch up enough to make the Omicron worth it. But we'll take him up to gear 12, and we are done with that portion. Get a nice little 5 Omnis for that. That's fantastic. But we are now Cal Kestis ready. Hopefully he comes back soon, but we'll see. But this is why I farm things quickly. I can take advantage. I just wish CG maybe would release some things to reward players like me. But I expect they're going to create a larger moat for the whales who were ready the first time. Now Leviathan, same deal. I'm actually short some signal data, so we're not going to get completely Leviathan ready, but we're like 5 days to go. I will be ready in 5 days time. I'm in the low double digits left on a couple pieces of the signal data. Everything else with the salvage and stuff is in place, so that means Sith Trooper here will take up to 7, and now you know what, let's do the Relic 9s because that'll be more beneficial towards Grand Arena, and I gotta relock in for Grand Arena. So Darth Revan, take him up, and then Malik, same deal, take Malik up. I wish we could click through this stuff faster. You can see the counts. I think I need to be at like 150 here. That one needs to be at like, I don't know. Just a little bit more work to be done. There's Darth Revan ready for the event. Same deal with Malik. Make these teams a little bit better for 3v3. And I think we can take one more character up to Relic 7, maybe? But now we got Malik, and that's 2 remaining characters where we just have Sith Trooper and HK. HK we don't use, so Sith Trooper, let's add some Relics. Although I could throw HK with like my Afra, maybe no, we're not in a 3v3 season. So HK is not going to get touched in 3. Well, I guess I could make a sortie team, possibly. Oh, nope, that's as far as we're getting. You can see we are now short on that piece. We're also short on the green piece, but that's good enough. And that's the first portion, the main portion, not even the main portion, the first portion of this. We still have the next bulk piece to talk about, which is the next things. This was about wrapping up the projects that we had been working on the past couple months, basically since the Cal Kestis requirements were announced. And then also, like, what this year has been, to break it down, is I unlocked Job in January, Dr. Afra in February, and then I started working on the Cal Kestis requirements, and I was fairly close to Sith Eternal Emperor, so I was going after Sith Eternal Emperor while I was doing those things simultaneously. Basically, the week that I unlocked, or I started the event for Sith Eternal Emperor, is when the Leviathan requirements were announced, and from that point forward, we were both working towards the Leviathan and working on getting my Sith Eternal Emperor usable, just trying to do it saving crystals, which meant I added weeks to the project. But now that I am Cal Kestis ready and Leviathan ready and Sith Eternal Emperor is almost ready to go to Relics, which is actually one of the things that we should highlight. Yes, Sith Eternal Emperor, that is one of the things we're doing in this video. He now goes to Relics. We are not taking him to high Relics though, because as you saw, we are out of the signal data that is way too valuable to be used elsewhere. We got 5 days to get myself finished for that event. But we can throw on this Zeta. I left this Zeta off originally because this Zeta only impacts relic levels, so there was no need to really do it without relics on them. Now we can do it. And we can add 1 relic level because one of these relic levels, this one here, doesn't take any signal data. So we can take him to Relic 1, but we stop there. Oh, and I gotta put the ultimate on. That would have been bad, because he's not good without it. Ultimate charged up. Mods need work, but we don't have the mods that I would like to put on them, and I'm not gonna, one of my rules is not to turn bad mods into 6-star mods. And here are my favorites. Some of this is the projects they were just working on. A lot of these characters we can take off of favorites now, like Sith Eternal Emperor is off of favorites. I'll talk about a couple of these. Maul, I want to have a higher relics, and for the Krayt Dragon raid, that's one long time project I've been working on. Starkiller, this character I use all the time, would like to get to higher relics. Chrysanthemum, raid, and I need a proper job. My Jabba team needs to be better. Traya, obviously, she would be great at relics. Kylo Ren, a bunch of reasons. Part of one is Ser Juno, one is fleets. Like, these are all just relics that would really improve my roster. Tarful, we're done for now. Marin, we're done for now. Saw, we're done for now. We're taking them all off the favorites. Grief, like, if you guys watch my Grand Arena videos, you just see my Fennec squad is not what it needs to be. So I'm just missing some key relics like a Grief, like Mando. That's why they're here. Fulcrum ties in the Ser Juno squad. Also, I've been talking about how awesome that Malicos is going to be, so I want to have Fulcrum as part of that. I might take some time though to do this one, just because maybe I want to show Malicos without relics, show that squad without relics. Also, we're just waiting on the Cal Kestis event to return. And then Captain Rex, these are current projects, so they're all favorited. Oh, we need to do this. For whatever reason, I like to show this stuff in the footage, so I always leave the Omega abilities for these videos. Oh, and we need to take him to higher gear too. So this is one of the, we're transitioning into the next things. And that is a Zeta I'm going to put on. I'm just churned through, what, 3 Zetas in this video? That's not great. Oh my God. Am I really, we're just going to put them both on. Not happy about it, but he's at gear 7. We're going to take him up to gear 11. That's what we do every one of these videos, straight up to gear 11. He's pretty easy to gear. He needs 3 Kairos up to gear 11, which is standard. The rest of the gear pieces, there's like a Carbonti, a Stunny, and a couple other pieces, but none of them's a huge deal. And then here at gear 11, put these pieces on. Most of this gear isn't a big deal to me anymore. There are a couple pieces like this is where I'm done being concerned about that I can put on. It's nice to be able to know that you can finish certain pieces. Yeah, this we don't need to worry about. It's just showing my counts where we start dropping a lot of these pieces of gear. Yeah, and so that's Scout Trooper, Third Sister, so you can see the progress. 100 shards to go. Sometime in October I'll have her. And there's Malicos for now. And the drop off in the number of characters that were favorited. We will make some further adjustments. But those are the characters I would like to work on, but they're not the bigger priorities other than these marquee characters and farming them up. What we need to talk about though is where do the GLs stand? Because up until Leia, I'm making some decisions about Leia. Here's how close I am to Lord Vader. I'm real close to Lord Vader. And what's kind of nice about Lord Vader is how a lot of these characters, they just kind of happen by playing the game. So you kind of, some of this was for the raid, some of these were for Datacron, some of this was for Sith Eternal Emperor, for other elements. I always had the Bad Batch because I go after characters right away. Zam for the Fennec Squad, Embo for Jabba and for the Krayt Dragon raid. It's just really just building up some of this stuff very quickly. I did Dooku and Newt for Datacrons, Dooku further for Sith Eternal Emperor. So it all started falling into place. Tarkin for Sith Eternal Emperor as well. So very close to Lord Vader. Then you can see Rey, pretty close. This last row here of Rey is a pivot point between Rey and SOKR. It's half and half. And SOKR, you can see like I take everybody up to gear 11 right away. So it was a several year project to get myself to this position, but now I'm very flexible with how I make these decisions. So obviously I'm going for a GL. I just have to make a decision about which one. But we've already talked about a lot of this stuff at the top of the video, all the reasons why Leia makes a lot of sense. And if you've watched some of my other videos, talked just about like the player that I've been up to this point. I've been a player who have tried to avoid putting relics on characters. I've tried, there are particular rules for relics that I would go after. And I even have a methods video about that. There are qualifications for what makes a good relic, and non-good relics are ones I try to avoid, which is why a character like Newt for a long time I just didn't have relics on him because he didn't need them. Or a character like you can take like a character like Wat Tambor, awesome at gear 11, you don't need him at relic. The only reason you take these characters to relics is because they're required for other things. So that was how I approached a lot of these other choices. Now we don't really have the choice. At the rate things are required, you just go after them. But that's how how I approached Relics. And with GLs, like I liked the competitive challenge of having fewer GLs than my opponents. I took forever to get my first GL. My first GL was JML, and then second GL was JMK. I rode 2 GLs for a real long time in Grand Arena 2.0 or whatever version of Grand Arena we're on, up until Jabba was released. Then I went after Jabba very quickly, and I got Jabba, and then that window shrank. I went to 4 GLs just basically last month, and we're not going to take a similar kind of window for the next ones. Like, even though I would prefer to hold off on GLs, the game is not what it was. We have to adapt, and that means getting the basically anytime a GL comes out now, you're going to want to get it pretty quickly if you have a mature roster, and that's an option for you, because the game is being tailored towards the new content so heavily that there are major benefits to having these characters unlocked quickly. Whereas historically, there were not the same meaningful differences and advantages and disadvantages between getting a GL either earlier or late. Like they were strong characters, but you'd be fine getting GLs in pretty much any order, more or less. But as we already saw with the Crate Dragon raid with Jabba, with Smuggler's Run 2, we're already being hinted at that with Leia. All these elements within the game are going to be tailored towards Leia, so having Leia early is going to matter, and depending on what kind of gear we get from Endor Escalation, the new tier of it, it's going to matter there too. And we're going to want, there will be benefits to getting Leia early, so I'm going to be doing it. The other element here is to just prove how easy it is to get Leia. Like, you've seen that I've already brought every character up to gear 11 as my staging ground, and what you'll see, like, let's take here, like, we have Kylo up here. Look at the amount of carbonite circuit boards that I need, the amount of signal data, and really the amount of Kairos that I need. I need 700 of the shock prods. The computers are much further down right here at 200. Similar deal with Rey. Take a look at her. We need 1720 and at 800. She's even further away than Kylo. 900 of the shock prod. Like, that's a ton. The computer, just so you see, 400. That's a lot. Lord Vader, same deal. That's the other one that I don't have. 1370. Much closer to Lord Vader with the carbonite circuit boards, but also he's higher level relics that don't utilize those. You see, though, with the signal data, much further away. That's a bigger project. But the Kairos, not that bad. I'm pretty close to Lord Vader when it comes to just the Cairo math. But then we gotta take a look at Leia. Leia, look at this. This is without Captain Drogon's calculations into this, but I am by far the closest to Leia when it comes to the carbonite circuit boards. When it comes to the signal data, pretty close. That's not meaningfully different than like an SOKR, but it's better than Rey and Lord Vader. And then the Kairos, like, you could make an argument that maybe like an SOKR or is somewhat comparable. I need a little bit more of the Cairo computers, but I'm much better on the shock prods. And then with Lord Vader, like Lord Vader, I'm closer on the Kairos, but much further away on the signal data. Shock prods, not too bad to get. So you can just see, relatively speaking though, Leia's pretty close. It's not that bad. And actually, I've already dropped down 3 sets of these Kairos, so 150 of these Kairos you can knock off from the shock prods and the battle computers, because I just put those on Scout Trooper. So that means the next step that we take is these 4 characters. This is what I mean. I was going to take all the characters that I can up to gear 12, because we have staging grounds. Gear 11's the first staging ground. The next staging ground is gear 12, and that's a staging ground that's been created because of the raid. I'm in the midst of taking my roster up to gear 12, because that's just one of those things I can do. Lobot will take up. We're not going to touch this stuff until we see what his rework is. Akbar's already there. Chirpa we will take up to gear 12 now. And Wicket's already there. So that gets us even closer now to Leia, where just these 3 and soon to be 4 remaining marquee characters. Oh, we gotta take Rex. We gotta add a star to Rex. And you know what? While we're here, we're gonna add 1 set of these. Like, I have a good amount of this stuff. We're not gonna add all of it, but we can add 1 for now. Because I've already budgeted this stuff out. Let me show. Like, you can use hot utils for some of this. I like to customize things a little bit. So this is just a table that I've made, like, because I'm tracking multiple sets of data here and comparing them against each other. Like, I'm looking at, like, here there's Leviathan, there's Calcestis, looking at their totals and how much I need for both of those projects combined and how that looks and impacts Leia Organa and Lord Vader. But those totals are being, I don't need to over explain this, but just some of the significance of the numbers here, because like the Leia totals and the Lord Vader totals are separate, but it's about, if I worked on Leviathan and Calcestis, what that subtotal is combined with the Leia project or the Lord Vader project, so I can make judgments of just how close or far away I am. But it also just shows that you can see I'm 53 fragmented signal data, 11 of the incomplete signal data away from the Leviathan, just because we talked about that earlier. But then you can just see how far away I am with Leia. And with Leia, it's only the salvage materials, the signal data, and the Cairo prod, but also the Mark 12 fusion furnace. Everything else I already have hoarded up in my inventory. And Lord Vader is a little bit further away. He's actually somewhat close. But I've been working on this stuff for a long period of time, and why I Hot Utils will do a simplified version of this. Not even simplified, it's great data, but I just like to take that data and compare it up against other pieces of data, which is why I built this out. Also, I want to visually represent certain things with colors and gradients so that I can read it with a glance instead of having to read all the numbers, because like I'm a designer. I want to view things from that kind of visual standpoint and not just the raw numbers. So if Leia is the main big project that we're working on, just looking out a little bit further, a couple things to be aware of. One is the raid and characters and requirements. Some of these characters I could take up to Gear 12 right now. I'm going to probably take a little bit more time on bringing these characters up to Gear 12. It is my goal. I would like to have them at Gear 12 before then. There's just other things that I want first, and there's still Gear 12 pieces that are tough to come by. It's the Mark 4 back to gel, the Mark 6 droid collar. There's a Mark 10 HoloLens, I believe. That all those pieces are more expensive and harder to get. So if you're not careful with those, you will deplete them pretty quick. The other thing that I'm balancing is I'm expecting that we get another Star Killer Afra level character within the next month or two, like sometime in September or October. I expect that we're going to see that. The past 2 years we have, technically you could even throw Jedi Knight Luke. Doesn't fit the same time scale in release, but in terms of like level of requirements, not too unlike, although Luke's a little bit more unique. But this level of character I would not be surprised to see again this fall. And it is something that I'm just mentally preparing for myself, that I want to keep hoarding up resources and pieces for these kinds of projects so that I can capitalize on them quickly. And if it does happen, I'm going to go after both Leia and that potential character simultaneously. I'll probably emphasize Leia first because the marquee characters will be farmed first, but not too soon, not too long after, I will hopefully have the other characters, just like we saw with Afra and Jabba, me unlocking them within a month of each other. So potentially there are the raid characters that we could address. Like for instance, we can like look at the Ewoks or the troopers. Like again, everybody's at Gear 11 in basically every faction. There's only a single character who I have unlocked that's not at that level, and it's Night Sister Initiate. But you can see like I could start choosing troopers and stuff, taking them up to that level. But right now what I think is going to benefit my roster more for Grand Arena, for other game modes, are pilots. I want to strengthen all of my pilots. So it's these characters who aren't yet at Gear 12 that I want to start bringing up there. And I want to choose amongst these the characters who are going to benefit multiple components of the game simultaneously. So characters like the theorized Radis counter on the Leviathan, that might require relic pilots. I haven't watched enough footage, but in my testing, my Radis is not adequate. So it is characters like Poe that I would like to take up to Gear 12 to see if I just get a little bit closer. I've been careful though, because again, the Mark 4 back to gel, you got to be careful with these. I am going to take him up though, because that's a ship I want to improve. I'll give him that. to help out the ship a bit. But that's a resistance pilot. And these Phoenix characters, I think, are one of the next sets I'm going to be looking at, taking them up. Maybe, I mean, Chopper, I guess. Like, Zeb has to be with Rex. You can see, what are these pieces here? We got this Mark 9. That one's not expensive. I could set, it's just a lot of characters need it. It's a finishing piece. Also, this is misleading because when you click on it, you can actually see how many you need. I am going to take him up just because with Rex, he's kind of not debatable. Whereas I think you could make an argument about, like, Ezra should probably be off. Chopper's debatable. Sabine feels like she needs to be there because of the staggers. I think there's one more I'm missing. I thought there was another resistance pilot. Let's take resistance pilot up. And he needs what? We'll just do that. This will be it for the week. And I am absolutely terrified how long this video is. This was supposed to be like a short experiment. I think I might have like a 30-minute video on my hands. Because like this segment alone is 5 minutes. And there's already been several segments that I think we're easily at 20 minutes. We'll see how long this video gets. But this is part of the reason why I like to, I've talked over footage in the past. It's just, I react to it differently, that I don't know if it's as helpful. But so let me know if this is something that's working or not. Because if it's not working, we're not going to do it too many more times. We might try and refine it a couple more times, but if not, I still want to show what I'm working on. We might just return to tacking it on to the end of the video. But thank you for watching. Still plays. Be excellent to each other, everyone.